9 News Plus weather, sponsored by Carrier Colorado. The future of home comfort is here.
Hey, happy Wednesday. We're halfway there on this work week. I'm meteorologist Chris Bianchi. Thanks for joining us here on 9 News Plus. We're also mostly done with the blizzard out on the eastern plains, but we're still dealing with some leftover impacts. That is mainly due to blowing snow out on the eastern plains. I'll show you some pretty eye-catching stats here in just a second, but start things off by taking a look at Denver, where we continue to be this little weird beacon of calmness in between snow in the mountains and snow on the eastern plains and really strong winds. Meantime, here along the urban corridor, I know, I saw your tweets yesterday. What snow? That kind of deal for us continues for us here in the metro area. Now, for us today, scattered snow showers. Could still see a flake or two in Denver. We're not going to see any accumulation in town, but east of Denver, maybe another dusting or so. The story, though, will be the cold and the continued wind for us east of town in particular. So I've got that little graphic over Denver because we're calm here. We're not talking about any advisories here in place, but into the mountains, winter weather advisories, winter storm warning for the parks and the elk heads. That'd be Steamboat Springs area and even kind of inching to the flat tops where we're looking at those winter storm warnings, an additional 5 to 10 inches of snow up there, and then the eastern plains. That is due to blowing snow. So we may not actually see a whole lot of snow actually falling from the sky, but all that snow that fell yesterday is going to be whipped up by those winds that still continue to gust at 40 to 50 miles an hour or above. Light snow continues for us from about, we'll call that kind of lock buoy on east. That's where we're seeing some of that snow, kind of Roggen on east and Byers on east. That's where we're seeing some of that snow continue right now for us on the eastern plains. Again, it's light. It's not a big deal. It's just a few flakes falling from the sky. The story out east is the wind right now. Forecast snow for us will be impacting travel for our friends in the mountains. So Highway 40, Rabbit Ears Pass, the usual spots, the usual trouble spots, Berthoud, Rabbit Ears Pass, the Eisenhower Tunnel, Loveland Pass, all going to be tricky drives for us today. Then we get a secondary surge of snow for us as we get into tomorrow night. It's a weak little system, but it'll bring us another shot of snow, and that'll be a bit more spread out statewide. That means, hey, more fresh powder, and we are continuing to look good in terms of those snowpack figures for us into the high country. Wind gusts right now, again, this is the other part of the story here. We're seeing those winds pretty gusty for us from Greeley, Fort Morgan on east, DIA on east. So we're seeing those winds still a little gusty at times. Those winds will gradually back off through the day today, gradually. So it's going to take some time for those winds to really calm on down. But still, looking at those winds even tomorrow morning, 30 plus miles an hour, and even by Friday morning, it's still gusty out on the eastern plains. Not really until the weekend that we finally get rid of that wind altogether. And how about this? At Fort Morgan, 42 consecutive hours with a wind gust at or above 35 miles an hour. That's just a long, very long period of time to be talking about winds that gusty. And also worth noting, Fort Morgan, you had a peak gust yesterday of, get this, 82 miles an hour. So really strong winds out on the eastern plains. At least we're talking about, we shouldn't be talking about 70 or 80 mile an hour gusts today. We should be maybe topping out in some cases at 40 to maybe 50 miles an hour, but maybe an isolated 60 gusts in there. But the winds should be a bit calmer today compared to yesterday. But anyways, not as bad as yesterday, but still pretty gusty out there. Temperatures right now, talking about those temps in the teens and 20s into the high country, and we are talking about those 20s and 30s out on the eastern plains. Temperatures a little bit warmer this time yesterday. Wouldn't exactly call it Maui out there, but it's a little bit better than this time yesterday. Today, upper 30s for us, mostly cloudy skies, flurries and cold for us, and maybe a flurry, again, better chance to head east of town. Tonight, it does drop down to about 12 degrees, partly cloudy skies, and it is chilly out there. Yeah, seasonably so, but still probably a little bit below average for this time of year. Tomorrow, a little colder than today, 34 degrees for us, partly cloudy skies. Winds on the eastern plains still will be there, but a little gradual decrease in those winds. But as we look at the next 7 days, temps around 40 for the weekend. Enjoy it because that may be our warm stretch next week, middle to end part of next week. I mentioned this briefly yesterday. There's a lot of questions out there in terms of what we're going to see for the mid to end part of next week. But at this point, it does look like we're going to at least get pretty cold. The question is, are we talking brutal, brutal cold? Are we talking it's going to be around zero, maybe a little below zero for us Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week leading up to Christmas? Of course, Christmas is a week from this upcoming Sunday, so this would be December the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, where we're talking about pretty darn cold temperatures. Are we talking highs in the 20s with lows around zero? Are we talking highs in the teens or even single digits with lows well below zero? That's the question. Right now, it looks like the bulk of the cold will probably stay just to our north, but we should still get on some pretty darn cold temperatures for the mid-time part of next week and perhaps some snow with that as well. Speaking of snow, so far this season at DIA, maybe a little lost in all of your screams about where the snow was yesterday. We did pick up 2 inches of snow officially at DIA. That brings us up to 12.9 inches so far this season. That's about 2.5 inches off our season to date average. So, sum it all up for you. Still a little gusty out on the eastern plains. More than a little gusty, still pretty gusty on the eastern plains. Blowing snow that will make I-76, I-70, Highway 34, all tricky drives for us for our day today. And then for us in the mountains, that snow continues for us. It'll slowly slacken tonight, but then we'll see it pick back up again tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. And then for us here in the Denver area, we're mostly pretty calm. We're just pretty cold for us for the next little while. So we're going to stay cold, and then mid to end part of next week, about a week out, it looks like we could get really cold, but we have to fine-tune some details, including potential for maybe some snow for the mid to end part of next week. But again, some details in there. Just stay with us. I'm just telling you, there's a lot of uncertainty. Meteorologist Greg Perez, who's back over there, and I were just chatting about this, and still a lot of things to fine-tune. So just, it's Colorado weather. I think you get the deal at this point. Maybe you learned it on Monday and Tuesday. It is a tricky place to forecast. There is no doubt about it, but we're going to try and get you some more clear answers once we get to the weekend, early next week, about what to expect for the mid to end part of next week. But it does look like it could turn pretty wintry out here. Mentioned Greg. He's going to be on at 9 News at noon. Greg, you're doing the 4 and 5 too, right? Yes, sir. So Greg will be on at 9 News at noon. He'll also be here at 9 News Plus at 2. And he'll be on at the 4 and 5 as well. And then meteorologist Lauren Robinson's in at 6, 9, and 10 tonight on the 9 News Family Networks. Once again, I'm meteorologist Chris Bianchi. Thanks for joining us here on 9 News Plus, and have a great rest of your Wednesday, and also stay warm out there.